This video is about the Boxer Rebellion. Around the year 1900, the secret society of Boxers rebelled against foreign powers in China. These foreign powers formed the Eight Nations Alliance to crush the rebellion. The Eight Nations Alliance consisted of the main European powers, plus Japan, plus the United States. To the background, the traditional China under the Qing dynasty was in decline. China lost 3 wars and had internal problems. On the other hand, the Western powers in Japan established spheres of influence in China, and Christian missionaries intensified the work. Against this background, the Boxer movement grew. The Boxers were probably first called Boxers by American missionaries because they saw them practicing martial arts. The Boxers want to cleanse China and free her from foreign suppression. The Boxer movement was very attractive to young and poor villagers. 2 German missionaries were murdered in 1897. That was reason enough for the German Empire to take control of a larger area around Tsingtao. France, Japan, Russia and the United Kingdom followed this role model. Then there was economic hardship in the province of Shandong. The Boxers gained members and the attacks on Christians and missionaries intensified. Important in the context of the Boxer Rebellion is the 100 Days Reform. This attempt to modernize China failed because of the resistance of traditionalists and the Empress Dowager. She saw her chance now to take over government and place the emperor under house arrest. When she said, the Boxers are righteous, of course then the attacks on Christians intensified again. The foreign powers were definitely not happy with that and they pressured the imperial court to ban the Boxers. But this ban was not consequently enforced, and so the Boxers could attack more and more foreigners and Christians in Beijing. Now, the Western powers in Japan stationed 450 troops in Beijing to protect their embassies. Furthermore, they launched a Seymour expedition, 2,000 troops traveling from Tianjin to Beijing. And they took key positions around Tianjin. Back to the Seymour expedition. Regular Chinese troops and Boxers defeated Seymour and his force. And they could just be saved just in time by a Russian-led regiment. Now the Empress demanded from the foreigners to leave Beijing. She issued a 24-hour ultimatum. The German envoy von Ketteler wanted to negotiate and on his way to negotiations he was murdered. After that, no foreigner and Christian left the legations anymore. The Empress declared war on all foreign powers, but here it has to be said that some governors, especially in the south of China, simply ignored the declaration of war and acted at least neutral. Some were actually fighting the Boxers themselves. Anyway, the siege of the legations began, but the Chinese could never take the legations. One reason is the Western and Japanese troops fought heroically. That was courageous, but the main reason why the Chinese could not take the legations lies in a chaotic situation on their side. There were contradicting positions. One was saying we should protect the foreigners, one we should attack. That was really not working out. And then it was time to finally decide this thing by the Allied forces. They took Tianjin, marched towards Beijing, won 2 battles, and by the 16th of August, the war was all but over. The Allied had control over Beijing. The Empress fled, and until September, the Russians took control of Manchuria. The might of the Western powers in Japan was too much for China. They had to accept the Boxer Protocol. There's another reason why the Boxer Protocol was accepted. Because the reign of the Empress was not questioned. Furthermore, China did not need to cede any territory, but had to pay higher reparations. 10 high-ranking officials should be executed, but this also was not consequently enforced. The European powers and the United States now gave up their plans to directly colonize China and control China. They tried this through the Chinese government. But that meant that in the long term, the Europeans and Americans would be out of China in favor of Japan. One exception might be Russia. Russia actually violated the Boxer Protocol and never withdrew from southern Manchuria. This led to a conflict of interest with Japan and then to the Russo-Japanese War. The traditional China and the Qing dynasty now have entered the last phase of their existence. A few additional notes. There are atrocities and war crimes on all sides. And what has to be mentioned is the Hun speech of the German Emperor William II that shocked the world, and the British propaganda used this speech again during World War I against the Germans. That was the Boxer Rebellion in 5.